Today we're looking at the close range secondaries that are literally broken in terms of TTK once you put them in Akimbo. And the main reason for this is because Infinity Ward did not put the same safeguards they did for Warzone 1 than Raven did with the integration of Cold War and Vanguard, where they put these hard caps on Akimbo to make them significantly weaker by modifying the damage profile, the ranges, and they did modify the damage a little bit, but it's not enough to stop them from being overpowered. So the first thing I did was jump in and do some testing on the rate of fire with the fastest rate of fire trigger, as well as the different varying damage profiles and how they were impacted. So here's the first part of the testing. You start firing, you fire the weapon, you press it as fast as you can, you get the individual fire rate of those 12 bullets. You do the same thing for each of the pistols. Then I tested to see if maybe there's something different if you have two of them, and it turns out that it ends up being the exact same on how fast you can fire these weapons. Then I also did some testing on the lasers, which we'll talk about. So this is kind of that part. Then once we do all of that, we plug in all the data into a spreadsheet, and this is kind of what we pull out. So here's the base P890 stock without the faster trigger, and then this is with the Akimbo and the faster trigger. And what you can see right here is the faster trigger makes it about 18% faster. Obviously, Akimbo's gonna double that. So overall, you end up with a fire rate of 145% faster overall. So you go from 286 up to 707, which is a huge jump. And what they've done is to modify the headshot value. And what they did is they didn't really modify any of the other values except for the headshot. They put kind of like a soft or hard cap, you want to call it. So when you fire it in single, you can see right here, it does 96 damage. And then with the Akimbo, it drops it down to 62 to match the neck and the chest. So they kind of remove the headshot multiplier on it. Then when it comes over to the further damage, still 62. So it's kind of like it would be 80, but they've kind of limited the most damage this can do is the chest shot. So I think this will get rebalanced eventually because this is still broken values, and this is up to 20 meters. Obviously, every bullet's got to hit, whatever. But that's kind of how that works. And this carried over with the other weapons that I tested as well. You can kind of see the overall damage values. This one starts at 66, but it's capped at 42 for the neck. And then it's same thing, it stayed 42 over here, and then this one stays 42 because this top one would be 46. So you kind of have that all there, and you can see how fast these TTKs are. This one will be 6 shots to kill up to 17 meters, which is pretty good because this one's 5 shots. But this one kills a little bit faster, slower fire. You know what I mean? There's different variables you got to consider. In this one, you get almost 900 RPM. And then the full autos, they are very weak in comparison. You still need a lot of shots to kill. And that's part of the problem with it. Even though it's super fast fire rate, you're going to bleed through ammo. You need to land a lot of shots. So it could be a little bit more forgiving if you have auto attack sprint on or something like that. But this will kind of go into that. And I'll probably do a little bit more of a dedicated video for snake shots because that one's a little bit more nuanced. It's like a shotgun. The Deagle, I don't really think is all that practical in terms of being useful outside of multiplayer. So what I did is I went into the firing range and I used no laser, with the laser, and then with the other laser that's visible, which we'll go ahead and talk about that. We'll zoom in a little bit. And there's two important parts with the laser. We have without firing, which you can see they're relatively close. They don't move that distance. So you would think, it's not that big a deal, but the spread while firing, and I tried to capture it at the peak of the spread. The purple is the best because that's the tightest. And then we have the yellow, which is a little bit further out, laser non-visible, and then no laser, that'd be on the outside. So obviously it will tighten up quite a bit if you are using the laser. These, you're going to use a very similar build. You're going to try and put on the fastest trigger. You can modify the magazine if you want. If you're playing solos, you can get away with 8, but that is a high skill thing. Very unforgiving. If you miss any bullets, you're kind of putting yourself in a bad spot. But that does free up an attachment. If you want to run ammunition, you can run hollow point. And although you really won't get much out of hollow point, it's really the tuning that can allow you to get a little bit further range. This is so small because the range is already small when you're doing a multiple of 9 meters and it's like 10%. Really, it only goes up by less than a meter, right? Like, so you got to kind of balance that out if you want to use that. I feel more comfortable with the 12. The barrel, we actually use this first one, which is bullet velocity, damage range, recoil control, and then hip fire accuracy. So you kind of got that there. And then we'll go ahead and use the tightest laser. And then obviously you're going to be able to do Akimbo. And then if you want all these, since we don't have the ability to aim down sight, we don't have aim walking, doesn't matter. So even if there are penalties associated with aim walking speed, we're not aiming down sight, so we'll never get that penalty. And then we could also do the same thing for damage range. because this specific scenario, it works out that way. Recoil smoothness, sprint to fire speed. This is huge. Aiming idle stability doesn't even matter. So you kind of have that to be built this way. And then pretty much, you know what I mean, you'd be able to take targets out. When we go to the X12, which is the other one I would recommend, this one is a little bit more forgiving because you can actually put on a significantly bigger mag, or just stay with the 17 and you still get a free attachment, versus the 8 is very penalizing, or the 12, you have to use an attachment for it. So you could still go the same route. You're gonna go for the one that gives you the fastest fire rate, which you can see right here, versus this one still helps with aiming idle stability, which we don't need. And we go there, that'll give the fastest fire rate. We don't have a similar barrel that helps with hip fire, so we got to go with the muzzle, and there is a muzzle that's going to help with the damage range, which is the steel fire one, and that'll give us just a little bit of damage range. So this one I think overall could be the better option because it has a little bit more versatility in the damage range. Even though it takes an extra shot, the TTK is still very comparable. It has a faster fire rate than the one we just saw, right? So then we have here, we can go akimbo laser, we go with the 1 milliwatt, and then we get a free attachment to pretty much do whatever we want, which in this case, like I said, you could put on a bigger mag if you wanted 24. Super comfortable. You probably, if you get through all 24 bullets on one person and you don't manage to kill them, there's another problem there. You're probably dead, right? If you want to use overpressure, this can make your target flinch by like 30+%, which is huge. Or you can go with the hollow point, which will give the crippling power, which will make it so that the player cannot move beyond already not being able to move. So I would go with either of these. Recoil control doesn't really matter. We can go for damage range and then bullet velocity, even though neither of those really matter on that bottom one. You still have a pretty tight hip spread. It even sounds a little different because of that. And you can see even at 25 meters, we're taking out a target at that range. We're able to take out 2 targets within 25 meters. Then we have the X13 Auto, which, like I said, isn't all that great for this because in use, it felt like you needed the full mag, like you need the 50 because you burned through bullets, but then that's going to be half your inventory. Then we can go ahead and put on akimbo because some attachments are blocked if you aren't using that properly. And then you kind of have, see there, that one blocks that. And then just like the other one, we'll go ahead and put on the steel fire with a free attachment slot. Since we can't put on a barrel, we'll go ahead and go with ammunition. So we can go ahead and go, like I said, target flinch. We can actually make that kind of crazy in the beginning. There it is. Boom, boom, and we're good to go. And you'll see this one. You need a lot of shots. Like we said, even at its close range, you need 12. Which is a lot of shots. So you're going to have to pull the trigger a little bit longer. The TTK, I don't really think it's worth the trade-off compared to the other ones. Even though it sounds cool to fire all those, and you'll probably scare someone and do damage point blank. The other ones are just more forgiving at that range. So hopefully you guys enjoyed those builds. Appreciate all the support on the content. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.